chosen one. There are moments in life when everything feels strangely quiet, yet deeply loud at the same time. Not loud in sound, but loud in meaning, loud in feeling, loud in the way your heart senses that something is shifting beneath the surface of your ordinary days. You may not understand it, you may not be able to explain it, but deep down you feel it. God is trying to tell you something. Not through thunder, not through a voice echoing from the sky, but through the subtle language of experience, emotion, timing, and awareness. The truth is, God rarely speaks in ways that force attention. Instead, He whispers through moments that make you pause, as situations that don't make sense, feelings that arrive without warning, doors that close when you desperately want them open, and doors that open when you are too afraid to knock. You may think these are coincidences, but your spirit recognizes patterns your mind has not yet learned to see. Sometimes the message comes through discomfort, a restlessness that won't go away, a sense that where you are is no longer where you are meant to remain. Everything may look fine from the outside, your routine, your relationships, your direction, yet inside there is a quiet resistance, like your soul is gently refusing to settle. That feeling is not confusion, it is not ingratitude, it is guidance. When God is trying to tell you something, peace often disappears before clarity arrives, because growth rarely begins with comfort. It begins with disruption. It begins with the subtle realization that the life you are living is no longer aligned with the life waiting for you. Other times, the message comes through repetition, the same lesson appearing in different forms, the same type of challenge showing up in different relationships, the same emotional trigger resurfacing again and again, as if life keeps circling back to something unfinished. This is not punishment. This is persistence. When you do not hear the whisper, the message repeats. When you avoid the lesson, the experience returns wearing a different face, but carrying the same meaning. God is patient, but He is also intentional. What you refuse to confront will continue to find you until you are ready to see it clearly. And then there are moments of unexpected stillness, pauses in life that feel confusing, even frustrating. Plans stall, progress slows. Answers don't come. You feel suspended between where you were and where you thought you would be. It feels like nothing is happening, but that silence is not emptiness. It is preparation. When God is trying to tell you something, He sometimes removes the noise so you can finally hear. Stillness is not abandonment. It is an invitation to reflect, to realign, to notice what constant movement once helped you ignore. Many people fear these quiet seasons because they mistake them for being lost, when in truth they are being positioned. You may also notice how certain people enter your life at exactly the right moment, offering words they didn't know you needed, perspectives that shift your understanding, encouragement that arrives precisely when your strength feels lowest. These encounters are not random. Sometimes God speaks through people who have no idea they are carrying a message. A conversation that lingers in your thoughts long after it ends, advice that echoes in your mind days later, a simple sentence that somehow answers a question you never spoke aloud. These moments are gentle reminders that guidance often travels through human connection. But perhaps the clearest sign that God is trying to tell you something is the feeling you cannot escape. That inner knowing, the sense that something is true even when you cannot logically prove it. It may feel like a pull in a certain direction, or a quiet warning when something is not right. It may appear as a deep peace about a decision that makes no sense on paper, or an unexplainable hesitation about something that seems perfectly reasonable. This is the language of intuition, the way divine guidance translates into human feeling. Logic speaks loudly, but truth often speaks softly. And when you learn to listen, you begin to realize that your inner awareness is not random emotion, it is spiritual communication. Many people ask for signs, expecting something dramatic, something undeniable. But what if the signs have already been appearing, just not in the form you expected? What if the delays, the detours, the disappointments, and the sudden changes were never obstacles, but messages? What if the things that didn't work out were actually directions, pointing somewhere better? It is easy to recognize guidance when it leads to immediate happiness. It is much harder to recognize it when it first arrives disguised as loss. Yet some of the most powerful messages from God come wrapped in experiences that initially feel painful, because sometimes redirection feels like rejection, until time reveals the protection hidden within it. When God is trying to tell you something, He does not force understanding all at once. Meaning unfolds gradually. You understand one piece today, another piece next month, and perhaps the full picture years later. What once felt confusing begins to make sense when viewed from a distance. You start connecting moments that once seemed unrelated. You realize that what you thought were endings were actually transitions. What you believed were mistakes were actually lessons guiding you toward wisdom. What you feared was uncertainty was actually transformation in progress. There is also a deep personal element to how God communicates. The message meant for you will reach you in a way your heart can recognize. For some, it comes through reflection. For others, through struggle. For others still, through sudden realization that feels like awakening from a long sleep. No two journeys look exactly the same, because no two souls are learning in exactly the same way. The message is always personal, always intentional, always shaped by what you need most, not what is easiest to accept. And here is something important to understand: when God is trying to tell you something, the purpose is not merely information, it is transformation. The message is not just meant to be heard, it is meant to change you, to shift how you see yourself, to reshape how you move through life, to help you release what no longer belongs to you and step toward what does. Divine communication is never just about awareness, it is about alignment. You may be at a point right now where something feels different, where life feels like it is gently or forcefully nudging you in a direction you didn't plan. You may feel uncertain, questioning, even resistant. That is normal. Growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels meaningful. But if you sense that something deeper is happening, if you feel like there is a message hidden beneath your current experiences, then pause. Listen. Reflect. Because awareness begins the moment you stop rushing past what is trying to reach you. God does not rush messages, and He does not abandon them either. What is meant for you will continue to find you until you are ready to receive it. Through silence, through change, through emotion, through timing, through unexpected clarity that arrives when you finally become still enough to notice. So, if you feel like something is shifting, if your heart senses meaning where your mind sees confusion, if life feels like it is speaking in a language you are only beginning to understand, trust that feeling. You are not imagining it. You are not lost. You are being guided. God is trying to tell you something, not to overwhelm you, not to confuse you, but to awaken you, to bring you closer to the path that was always waiting, closer to the truth that has always been calling, and closer to the person you are becoming, one quiet message at a time. And sometimes the message God is sending you does not arrive as a gentle whisper, but as a deep inner shaking, the kind that rearranges how you see everything you once felt certain about. It can feel like the ground beneath your identity is shifting, like beliefs you held tightly are loosening their grip, like perspectives you never questioned are suddenly being examined from every angle. This can feel unsettling, even frightening, because clarity often begins with dismantling illusion. When God is trying to tell you something important, He may first show you what is no longer true, what is no longer aligned, what is no longer meant to guide your decisions. And losing certainty can feel like losing control. But what is really happening is not loss, it is awakening. You are being invited to see more deeply, to question more honestly, and to live more intentionally than ever before. There are moments when this awakening feels like emotional intensity you cannot explain. You may find yourself more sensitive to things that once seemed small. Words carry more weight, silence feels heavier, situations affect you more deeply than they used to. This is not weakness, it is awareness expanding. When God is trying to reach you, your inner world often becomes more responsive, more alert, more alive. It is like your spirit is being tuned to a clearer frequency, making it impossible to ignore what once blended into background noise. You begin noticing what drains you, what energizes you, what feels right, and what feels deeply wrong. Your tolerance for what is misaligned begins to shrink, not because you are becoming difficult, but because you are becoming honest. You may also notice a strange tension between who you have been and who you are becoming. Old habits may feel harder to maintain. Familiar environments may feel uncomfortable. Even conversations that once felt natural may now feel forced or empty. It can seem like you no longer fully belong to the version of life you built before. This is one of the clearest signs that God is trying to tell you something. You are outgrowing what once contained you. Growth always creates distance between your past and your present, and that distance can feel lonely before it feels liberating. You may wonder why you cannot simply return to how things used to be, why what once satisfied you now feels incomplete. But once awareness expands, it does not shrink back. Once you see more, you cannot pretend to see less. Sometimes the message comes through a deep longing that appears without a clear destination. A desire for something more meaningful, more real, more aligned. Even if you cannot define exactly what that means, this longing is not random dissatisfaction. It is direction without a map. It is your spirit sensing possibility before your mind understands the path. Many people try to silence this feeling by distracting themselves, filling their time, staying busy, surrounding themselves with noise, so they do not have to sit with the question quietly forming inside them. What is life trying to show me right now? But distraction only delays understanding. The longing remains steady and patient, waiting for your attention. Another way God communicates is through contrast. He allows you to experience what something is not so you can recognize what it truly is. You may experience the wrong path so you can recognize the right one when it appears. You may feel emptiness so you can recognize fulfillment. You may experience disconnection so you can understand the value of genuine connection. These contrasts are not mistakes in your story, they are clarity in progress. Without contrast, recognition would be impossible. Without experiencing what drains you, how would you fully appreciate what restores you? Without walking through confusion, how would you recognize truth when it finally stands clearly before you? There are also moments when the message feels like pressure, not external pressure from the world, but internal pressure building quietly within you, a sense that something needs to change, a feeling that waiting is no longer comfortable, a realization that the life you are living requires courage to evolve. This pressure is not meant to break you. It is meant to move you. Just as pressure deep within the earth forms diamonds over time, spiritual pressure shapes strength, clarity, and transformation. It pushes you beyond hesitation, beyond fear, beyond the familiar limits you once believed were permanent. You may find yourself revisiting memories, reflecting on past decisions, seeing old experiences from a completely new perspective. Things that once felt meaningless now reveal hidden lessons. Painful moments begin to show purpose. You start understanding why certain paths closed, why certain relationships changed, why certain dreams did not unfold the way you expected. This reflection is not random nostalgia, it is integration. God is helping you gather the pieces of your experience so you can see the pattern they form together. Understanding your past is often part of understanding the message meant for your future. And then there is surrender, perhaps the most difficult part of receiving any message from God. Because understanding is one thing, but trusting is another. You may begin to sense what you are being guided toward, but moving in that direction requires releasing control, releasing certainty, releasing the illusion that you must have everything figured out before you take the next step. Surrender does not mean giving up responsibility for your life. It means releasing resistance to what is unfolding. It means allowing guidance to lead where fear would prefer to stay still. Many people miss divine messages because they expect them to feel comfortable. But growth rarely feels comfortable at first. Realignment can feel disorienting. Change can feel uncertain. Transformation can feel like standing in between identities, no longer who you were, not yet fully who you are becoming. This in-between space can feel confusing, but it is sacred. It is where reconstruction happens. It is where your life reorganizes itself around deeper truth. You might also notice that your desires are changing. Goals that once seemed essential may no longer carry the same importance. Priorities shift. Values deepen. What once motivated you may now feel shallow, while things you once overlooked suddenly feel profoundly meaningful. This is not inconsistency, it is refinement. God is not only guiding your direction, He is reshaping your desires so they align with the path meant for you. Sometimes the message is simple but powerful. Slow down, pay attention, be present. Many people move through life so quickly that they never notice the subtle guidance woven into everyday moments. But when you begin to sense that God is trying to tell you something, awareness sharpens. Ordinary moments feel significant. Small insights feel profound. You begin to see meaning not only in major events but in quiet details, timing, intuition, emotional shifts, unexpected understanding. And perhaps the most profound realization of all is this: God does not only speak when something is wrong, He also speaks when something is ready, ready to grow, ready to change, ready to emerge. Sometimes the message is not about fixing anything, it is about stepping into what has been forming within you all along. So if life feels intense, reflective, uncertain, or deeply meaningful all at once, if you feel like something inside you is awakening, stretching, questioning, and reaching, do not rush to silence it. Do not dismiss it as confusion. You are being invited into awareness. You are being guided into alignment. You are being prepared for understanding that unfolds step by step, moment by moment, realization by realization. And even if you do not yet fully understand the message, the fact that you feel it means you are already beginning to receive it. And then there comes a stage where the message is no longer just something you feel. It becomes something you cannot ignore. It moves from subtle awareness into undeniable presence. It begins shaping your decisions, influencing your reactions, and quietly guiding the direction of your life in ways that become increasingly clear the more you pay attention. This is the stage where what once felt like vague intuition starts forming into understanding. You begin to notice patterns not just in what happens to you, but in how you respond, what you're drawn toward, what you resist, and what consistently calls for your attention, no matter how many times you try to move past it. At this point, the message God is sending often reveals itself through alignment and misalignment. You start sensing almost immediately when something fits your path and when something pulls you away from it. Situations that once felt neutral now feel charged with meaning. Choices that once seemed simple now carry emotional clarity, a deep inner peace when something is right, and a persistent unease when something is not. This clarity can feel overwhelming at first because it removes the comfort of unconscious living. You can no longer pretend you don't know when something feels wrong. You can no longer ignore the quiet truth rising within you. Awareness creates responsibility, and responsibility requires courage. This is also the stage where resistance often becomes strongest. Not because you don't understand the message, but because you do, and understanding means change may be required. Change in how you think, change in what you accept, change in what you release, change in who you allow yourself to become. The mind often resists what the soul already recognizes as necessary. You may find yourself hesitating, questioning, negotiating internally, wondering if you can somehow keep what is familiar while still moving toward what is calling you forward. But guidance rarely asks you to stay exactly where you are. It invites movement, growth, expansion, and expansion requires space. Space is created by letting go. Letting go is rarely dramatic. It is often quiet, gradual, and deeply internal. It may look like losing interest in things that once consumed your attention. It may feel like emotional distance from environments that once felt comfortable. It may appear as a growing sense that certain chapters of your life have reached their natural conclusion, even if nothing external has forced them to end. This kind of release is not loss, it is transition. It is the clearing of space for something more aligned to enter your life. But even when you understand this intellectually, emotionally it can still feel tender, uncertain, and vulnerable. Growth stretches you beyond emotional habits you have relied on for stability. There is also a powerful shift that happens in how you perceive time. When God is trying to tell you something deeply important, patience becomes part of the message itself. You begin realizing that not everything unfolds according to urgency. Some things unfold according to readiness, and readiness cannot be rushed. You may feel like you want answers now, clarity now, resolution now, but instead life invites you into process. A process that unfolds step by step, layer by layer, revealing only what you are prepared to understand at each stage. This can feel frustrating if you are used to immediate results, but spiritual understanding is not built on speed, it is built on depth. During this stage, trust becomes essential, not blind trust, but experiential trust. The kind that grows from noticing how guidance has already shaped your life in ways you didn't fully recognize at the time. You begin remembering moments when things didn't go as planned but eventually led somewhere meaningful. Moments when delays protected you. Moments when unexpected changes opened doors you never would have approached on your own. Reflection builds trust because it shows you evidence that guidance has been present all along, even when you didn't fully understand it. Another powerful transformation that often happens is a shift in how you relate to fear. Fear doesn't disappear, but it changes meaning. Instead of being something that stops you, it becomes something that signals growth. You begin noticing that what you fear most is often connected to what matters most. The conversation you're afraid to have, the decision you're afraid to make, the direction you're afraid to explore. Fear becomes less of a barrier and more of an indicator, pointing toward areas where expansion is waiting. And as you gradually move through fear rather than away from it, confidence begins to grow, not because everything feels easy, but because you begin trusting your ability to move forward, even when things feel uncertain. You may also experience an increasing sense of responsibility for your own awareness. Once you recognize that God is communicating through your experiences, you can no longer live passively. Life stops feeling random. You begin observing more intentionally, reflecting more deeply, listening more carefully to your inner responses. Awareness becomes a daily practice rather than an occasional realization. You become more present, more attentive, more willing to pause and ask what each moment might be revealing. There is often a deep emotional purification that happens during this stage as well. Old wounds surface, not to cause pain again, but to be understood differently. Emotions you once avoided may return, asking to be acknowledged, processed, and released. This can feel intense, because healing is not simply about forgetting the past. It is about transforming your relationship with it. You begin seeing how past experiences shaped your beliefs, your fears, your expectations, your sense of identity. And as you bring awareness to these patterns, you gain the ability to choose differently. Healing becomes part of receiving the message, because clarity requires emotional freedom. At the same time, gratitude often begins to deepen in unexpected ways. Not just gratitude for what feels good, but gratitude for what shaped you. Gratitude for lessons that strengthened you. Gratitude for redirections that protected you. Gratitude for moments that forced you to grow beyond what you thought you could handle. You begin recognizing that every experience contributed to the person capable of receiving the message you are now becoming aware of. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Everything played a role. You may also notice that your relationship with uncertainty changes. Instead of seeing the unknown as something threatening, you begin seeing it as something sacred, a space where possibility exists. Certainty offers comfort, but uncertainty offers expansion. And when you trust that guidance is present even when outcomes are not yet visible, uncertainty becomes less frightening. It becomes an open doorway rather than a dark void. Another subtle but powerful sign that the message is becoming clear is the shift from seeking external validation to trusting internal knowing. You begin relying less on approval, less on comparison, less on confirmation from others that you are moving in the right direction. Instead, you begin recognizing the quiet confidence that comes from alignment. Decisions feel right not because everyone agrees with them, but because they resonate deeply within you. This internal stability is not arrogance. It is grounding. It is the natural result of living in closer connection with guidance. And perhaps most importantly, you begin realizing that the message God is sending is not just about what you should do. It is about who you are becoming. It is about transformation at the level of identity. You are not simply being directed toward a different path. You are being shaped into a person capable of walking that path with clarity, strength, compassion, and awareness. There is a profound humility that develops here, the realization that you are being guided, supported, shaped, not through control, but through relationship. A relationship with awareness, a relationship with truth, a relationship with growth itself. You begin understanding that receiving divine messages is not a single event, but an ongoing process, a continuous conversation unfolding through experience, reflection, and transformation. And as this understanding deepens, something within you begins to settle. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the process of receiving them. Not because everything is certain, but because you recognize the presence of guidance even within uncertainty. Not because life becomes easier, but because it becomes more meaningful. At this stage, the message is no longer something you are searching for. It is something you are living. Every decision, every realization, Every moment of awareness becomes part of how the message continues to unfold within you, and you begin to understand that this communication was never meant to be a single revelation. It is a lifelong unfolding, a gradual awakening, a continuous invitation to live more consciously, more truthfully, and more aligned with the deeper purpose quietly shaping your journey. And eventually, after all the signs, the feelings, the shifts, the resistance, the questioning, and the quiet realizations, there comes a moment when the message God is sending no longer feels distant or mysterious. It begins to feel personal in a way that changes how you see yourself and how you understand your place in the world. What once felt like something happening others to you now feels like something unfolding through you. You begin to understand that this communication was never just about guiding your circumstances. It was about awakening your awareness so deeply that you start living with intention instead of reaction, with trust instead of fear, with clarity instead of confusion. This stage is not dramatic on the outside. In fact, to others you may look the same. You still move through ordinary days, ordinary responsibilities, ordinary routines, but inwardly everything is different. Your perception has changed. You notice meaning where you once saw randomness. You respond with patience where you once reacted with urgency. You pause where you once rushed. The message you've been receiving has reshaped the way you experience life itself. And that shift is profound, even if it is invisible to everyone else. You begin to realize that guidance was never meant to remove difficulty from your life. Instead, it was meant to give your experiences purpose. Challenges no longer feel like interruptions to your path, they feel like part of it. Delays no longer feel like wasted time, they feel like preparation. Uncertainty no longer feels like abandonment, it feels like space where something new is forming. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes meaningful in a way that gives strength even during difficulty. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this helping me become?" There is also a deep sense of acceptance that grows within you, not passive acceptance, but peaceful awareness. You begin to accept that not everything needs immediate explanation. Not everything needs control. Not everything needs resolution on your timeline. Some things need time to unfold naturally. Some truths need experience before they can be understood. And some answers arrive only when you have grown enough to recognize them. Acceptance does not mean you stop caring about your life. It means you trust the unfolding of it. You may also notice a quiet strength emerging in places where you once felt fragile. Situations that would have overwhelmed you before now feel manageable. Decisions that once felt impossible now feel clear. Conversations that once felt intimidating now feel necessary. This strength does not come from force or pressure. It comes from alignment. When you begin living in harmony with the guidance you have been receiving, your energy is no longer divided between what you feel is right and what you are afraid to do. Inner conflict begins to dissolve, and with that, your strength naturally expands. Another powerful change is the way you relate to the future. Instead of trying to predict every outcome, you begin to trust direction more than certainty. You focus less on knowing exactly where everything will lead and more on taking the next step that feels aligned. The future stops feeling like something you must control and starts feeling like something you are being guided into. This does not remove responsibility from your choices, it deepens it. Because now your choices come from awareness rather than fear. There is also a profound sense of humility that develops as you reflect on how the message unfolded in your life. You begin to see how many times you were guided when you didn't realize it. How many times you were protected in ways you didn't notice. How many times what felt like an ending was actually a redirection. This reflection softens your heart. It deepens your gratitude. It reminds you that you were never navigating alone, even in moments when you felt completely uncertain. And something else begins to happen. You become more present, truly present. Not just physically existing in moments, but consciously experiencing them. The small details of life begin to feel more vivid. A quiet morning feels meaningful. A simple conversation feels significant. A moment of peace feels like a gift rather than something to rush past. When you recognize that guidance is woven into everyday experience, ordinary life becomes extraordinary in its depth. You no longer wait for big moments to feel couture, becomes part of the ordinary rhythm of your days. As this awareness deepens, you may also feel a growing desire to live more authentically, to speak more truthfully, to choose more intentionally, to align your actions with what you know in your heart rather than what feels expected by others. This is not rebellion, it is integrity. When you understand that God is communicating with you personally, your life becomes something sacred to honor, not something to shape around external approval. You begin living from inner conviction rather than outer pressure. And yet, even with all this clarity, there is still mystery. There are still unanswered questions. There are still moments when you don't fully understand what is happening or where you are being led. But now, mystery no longer feels threatening. It feels sacred. You begin to understand that not knowing everything is part of the relationship between guidance and growth. If everything were revealed at once, there would be no journey, only arrival, and life was never meant to be a single moment of arrival. It is a continuous unfolding. Perhaps one of the most beautiful realizations at this stage is understanding that the message God is sending is not separate from your life. It is your life. Every experience, every shift, every realization, every challenge, every moment of peace, every unexpected turn, all of it forms the language through which guidance speaks. There was never a single moment when communication began or ended. There was only awareness gradually opening to what had always been present. You also begin to understand that listening is not something you do once. It is something you practice daily, through reflection, through stillness, through honesty with yourself, through paying attention to what feels aligned and what does not. Listening becomes a way of living, not an occasional act. And the more you listen, the clearer the guidance becomes. Not because the message changes, but because your ability to recognize it deepens. There may even come a quiet sense of peace that surprises you. Not a loud, overwhelming peace, but a steady one, a grounded one, a peace that exists even when life is uncertain. A peace that comes from knowing you are paying attention, that you are listening, that you are willing to move when guided and wait when needed. This peace is not dependent on everything going perfectly. It is rooted in trust that whatever unfolds, meaning will be present within it. And perhaps the final realization, the one that changes everything, is understanding that you were never being told something to control you, but to awaken you, to help you live with deeper awareness, to help you grow into your fullest self, to help you recognize the connection between your inner world and the path unfolding around you. The message was never about limiting your freedom. It was about guiding you toward a life lived with purpose, clarity, and conscious presence. So when you look back on everything, the confusion, the restlessness, the repeated lessons, the silence, the shifts, the growth, the surrender, you begin to see a pattern, a gentle, persistent communication guiding you step by step. Not forcing, not rushing, not overwhelming, simply inviting you again and again to notice, to listen, to trust, and to become. And even now, the message is still unfolding. Not because you haven't received it, but because it is alive. It continues to guide your awareness, shape your choices, and deepen your understanding with each passing moment. You are not waiting for the message anymore. You are living within it, aware, attentive, and open to whatever truth is revealed next, one quiet realization at a time.